Well, good morning, Creek. This is the day that the Lord hath made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Well, happy Father's Day to all of the fathers, those who are holding it down. We salute you. We thank God for you. Enjoy this wonderful day that has been set aside just for fathers. And we look back and we thank God for the fathers that we had in our lives. Maybe you did not have your biological father or earthly father, but you had somebody that was a father figure in your life. So we thank God for them. We thank God for the fathers. For many of us whose fathers are gone on to glory, we thank God for the wonderful job they did, passing the torch to us, teaching us how to be godly fathers. Well, on today, I am switching it up some. Instead of a traditional virtual worship service, I've asked some men, some fathers here at the Creek to join me on this panel, and we're going to discuss being fathers in 2020. We're going to discuss being fathers in 2020, but not only being fathers in 2020, we're going to discuss what's going on in our nation and how we can help as the church, as the body of Christ, how we can help allowing God to use us to set the example, to set the way, to work towards some type of racial reconciliation, or to work towards some way of addressing the social unrest here that we are facing in this nation. I have some great fathers on this panel with us that I asked to be a part of this, and we're just going to talk about the state of America 2020 and being fathers in a pandemic and social unrest. So allow me to introduce these men. On my left, I'm going to first start with my brother from another mother. This is Sergeant Kevin Leak. He's a part of the Creek. He's also a sergeant with the Memphis Police Department. He has served our community for 21 years. He's a father. He has 2 teenage boys and a baby girl. So we're glad to have Kevin on this panel with us because I wanted to get his perspective as well on what's taking place in our nation, him being a sergeant with the Memphis Police Department. Next to Kevin, I have Minister Julius Williamson. We thank God for him. He has a daughter and a son. He's a father. He's a minister here at the Creek. So we're so glad to have him to join this panel with us on this morning. Next to him, we have Josh Wilson. He has 1 son. He's a young father. We thank God for him, to have him on this panel. Next to him, we have the one and only Don Langston. He has 1 daughter. He's a father. He's our Sunday school teacher as well. And the only problem that I have with him, he's a Cowboy fan. We're going to be praying for him on this Father's Day. Well, we have Reverend Dedrick Pitts. He is a father of 1 son, and he is a Cowboy fan as well. I don't know how it worked out that they're right next to each other, but we're gonna pray for them. Glad that they're close to the altar. Next to Reverend Pitts, we have Robert Lungo. And let me pause and say that we did not go on Amazon and do a 2-day Prime for a white male. Robert is a part of the Creek. He is a part of the Creek family. We did not say, hey Siri, we need a white male right quick. Robert is a part of our family, and we thank God for Robert. Next to Robert Lungo, we have Clyde Brooks Sr. He has 1 son, 2 daughters, and 3 grands. We thank God for him. He served our country in Vietnam, so I want to get his perspective as well. Next to Clyde, we have Sergeant Corey Warren. He has served the Shelby County Sheriff Department. He's a sergeant with the Shelby County Sheriff Department. He's also a father. He has 3 boys. And I wanted to get Corey's perspective as well concerning what we are dealing with in this nation. Let me start with a passage of scripture. I'm going to read it, and it comes from 1 Chronicles chapter 12. Let me read this, beginning with verse 32. And I'm reading from the King James Version of the Holy Bible. Verse 32 reads, "And of the children of Issachar, which were men that had understanding of the times, to know what Israel ought to do. The heads of them were 200, and all their brethren were at their commandment." Notice that these men were men who had an understanding of the times, and they knew what Israel ought to do. And that's what we need, Creek, to all of our guests tuning in. That's what we need. We need men and women who understand the times and who understand what's taking place in our nation. I believe that the body of Christ has to be the first responders to what's going on in our nation. These men knew what Israel ought to do. So we are living, just like the men of Issachar, we are living in some serious times. So let's talk about those times. Let's talk about the state of America 2020. Let's talk about being a father in a pandemic. Let's talk about being a father in social unrest, because we all are watching our television. We see what's going on in our jobs, in our communities. We see what's going on in this nation. And we're also going to talk about being a black father in these times as well. Well, it's Father's Day, and we know that one less father is on this earth. I'll say again, it's Father's Day, and we know that one less father is on this earth. I would like to get you all's reaction to the George Floyd death and that of many other unarmed African-American men and women in our nation. So I'll open that up to anyone. I just want to get your reaction when you saw the video, when you saw what took place. I would just like to get you all's reaction. Anyone? Yes, Reverend Wood, yes.
My reaction to the George Floyd's death, I was devastated.
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked.
Right.
I couldn't believe it.
Right.
And the worst part of that, I'm looking and watching it.
Yeah.
With my own eyes as it happened.
Right.
And that's what made it, it's happening. I couldn't believe that it's actually happened right before America. Millions of people are watching this. I'm watching this.
Right.
And to add entry to the situation, the person that has his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck has his hands in his pocket and just, this is nothing.
Right.
That's the expression that I was getting from him, and that's something that I had a hard time sleeping.
Right.
The night following.
Yeah.
That death.
Absolutely. Anybody else a reaction to that? Yeah, Kevin.
I mean, if you just look at the entire situation, I don't know if they don't film executions live, but you witness what people on death row go through on a yearly basis. You witness a live execution at that particular moment.
That's crazy.
Somebody is sitting there breathing, talking to you, and minute by minute losing life as you sit back and be an audience to it.
Right.
And it'll put anybody at rage.
Yeah.
Because who are we to be the judge and jury of a person?
Right. Right.
So I mean that's and it warrants a lot of the reactions that are happening now. Happening right now in the country.
Absolutely. That's amazing that even what Sergeant Lee, I'm gonna call him Kevin, that's my brother, said that the reaction, even for him, and he's an MPD police officer, it was rough, it was harsh. Anybody else want to chime in on that? Brother Clyde?
It was just to look at it and the smirk that was on his face while he was applying pressure.
Yeah.
And it brought me back to some things that he put on in the military. First, when he had his hand in his pocket, it was overtaken. You put pressure
See that in America.
to see it.
Yeah.
I think he just got his hands in his pocket,
Right.
but it was giving him leverage.
Right. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. A lot of people didn't see that, but that is absolutely true. See it from that perspective, Josh.
Well, I'm going to be honest. I haven't watched the video in its entirety. I try to shield myself from certain things. I don't want to take in so much negativity with so much going on, but I do know what happened. I've seen photographs and things of that nature, and it's just disheartening as a black man to see someone executed as he said.
Yes.
And you know, it's scary having a son, and even for myself, being 31 years old, it's just it's difficult to digest.
Yes.
And I mean, just getting the reaction from my parents, you know, it really unsettled my mother, you know, because she was just, you know, I guess frustrated and just could, you know, outdone. How could someone do another human like that? Just take someone's life that easily. So it was very frustrating and disheartening.
Absolutely. Don?
Yes, when I actually saw it, it was kind of disturbing, but I really wasn't just upset about it because it's something that has been playing out for years. You know, he's not the first one.
Yeah.
You know, there's
One
been
of
many
many.
before him.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen it on television time and time again.
Right.
You know, so it's like I said, it's just another piece in that puzzle of disturbing events
Right.
as far as an African American man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And some would say, you know, some may be commenting now on Facebook, or you're commenting now on YouTube. Some would say, well, what does that have to do with the church? You know, why should the church be talking about this? I'm going to apply that real soon to show you how the church plays a role in that. Anybody else? Reverend Pitts?
Yes, Pastor. It was very horrific to see that, to see a man's life escape his body, just like that in real time. Very horrific. I have a son, 17, so I think about him when he's out and in the public and dealing with what's going on in our country today. There was a public lynching. That's what it was, and it was very horrific. Just to know that in 2020, those atrocities are still being played out day after day on our streets. And not only that, but other young men have lost their lives being hung in trees all across the country.
Right.
So we are definitely at a time where we need to definitely be praying more and more.
Yes.
Because I'm actually afraid for my son.
Yes.
You know,
Your son just graduated.
he just graduated high school.
Daniel just graduated.
He's driving, and I've given him the talk of how to conduct himself in the presence of a law official, a law officer. And you know, whenever you're in the presence of a law officer, they are in charge.
Right.
And to always obey the law. I've come from the military. I live my life and respect all law officers.
Yes.
I do. And by being serving in the military, serving on the police force, we still serve in this country.
Absolutely.
So I give them all the respect. But what I saw on the TV the other day was so heartbreaking.
Yes.
To know that you would rather kill somebody in that fashion. And the whole world, we have a right to be upset about this.
Yes. Yes.
We have a human right because there was no regard for life.
Yes.
There was no connection as a human emotional connection for someone to do that. And to place with 3 men to be on his back, it's hard to breathe.
Yes.
It's hard to breathe. It's understandable. You can have enough compassion to realize that this man needed air. And it was so many others.
Yes.
Eric Garner.
Yes.
So many others. Trayvon Martin.
Yes.
Senseless killings in this country.
Just happened.
There shouldn't be.
That's right.
And it was very horrific.
You said something I think is very important. You said you have a right to be upset because, you know, some people say, well, it's just time to move on. You know, George Floyd died on Memorial Day, and protests are still going on. You know, and some people may say, well, I think it's just time to move on. You know, what do you all say to that person who says, well, I think it's just time to move on? Come on, Sergeant Warren.
I
think as a younger African American male, it kind of makes you take a pause to the stories that you hear from your parents and your grandparents, because you respect the things that the generation before you did and they accomplished, so you can have the liberties that you have now.
Yes.
But then things become that much more surreal
Yes.
when you witness it, and then you see the anger and the frustration from the previous generation.
Yes.
And for me, it resonated flashbacks of my grandfather, who talked about how he and fellow vets were treated when they came back from war.
Yes.
And my grandfather was a Marine, and he fought in Korea, and he talked about how, regardless of what he might have done in the uniform, he was viewed a certain type of way once he came back. So it's just, as a young man, it kind of gives you a pause to understand that where you are now is because somebody else blazed the path, but that not necessarily all of those injustices have been corrected.
Absolutely.
Along the way.
Absolutely. And some will say, some will hear this, and some will say, well, this is just isolated incidents, isolated, events. And I say to that this is what the African American male or the African American woman has been dealing with all of their life, 400 plus years. And I think, and I know it affects all of us. Just recently, here I am, I'm a pastor. Just recently, I got profiled in the store by some white women. I'm in shopping. They're looking like they about to call security. I'm not always in a suit. As a matter of fact, I'd rather wear a suit. I'm not always in a suit. I might have some jeans, a Nike hat on, some Nikes, and you go inside of a store, and it's almost as if you got to prove that you're legit. Yeah. I've been there before. You got to prove. You got to prove that you're legit. And toward the end, they're like, "Oh, okay, he's gonna buy something." It happened. I recall the first time, just to bring this, shed some light on this subject, so that people will not think that these are just isolated incidents. I recall the first time that I flew first class. It was awesome. I was like, yeah, I done made it. First time I flew first class. But when I bought the ticket, it's not like I paid for the first class ticket up front. I wasn't a baller like that. What I did was I bought a ticket in coach. And when I got to the airport, the screen prompt, do you want to upgrade? And the upgrade to first class, upgrade price of $60-something. I was like, sure. So I upgraded, looking like I done bought a first class ticket at first. I done upgraded. I got to the gate. They called for first class. Grabbed my stuff, lined up, in line, and this white gentleman said, they call first class, right? Now, I had been preaching for about a year. I was still a social minister, so I've been preaching for about a year, so, God's still working on me, The old me would have told him something. But the new creature, the new creation in Jesus Christ, just didn't pay any attention. This is what we deal with as African American men and women. Talk about a time that you were racially profiled. Can you all recall a time that you were racially profiled just because of your skin color? Yes, sir.
Yes, Pastor. Unfortunately, I have several examples.
Wow.
But due to time, I'm just going to talk about one.
Mm-hmm.
And this one happened many, many years ago when I was a teenager. A friend, two of us, we both about 17 years old.
Yes.
We went through a town, and we were trying to find something to eat because we got home. So we went to this restaurant, and it was raining, and we saw some people on the outside of the restaurant. in line, and we didn't know why. Well, what are they, you know, it's raining. Why are we out there? So my friend and I, we went inside. We went inside the restaurant. And were we afraid? Yes, we were. As soon as we walked in there, we started shaking. But we were hungry. So we went up to the counter and ordered a hamburger. The lady at the counter, she just looked at us. She just looked at us. And to add insult to injury, a table just as long as the one that we are sitting, there was one guy sitting at that table. One. I accidentally touched the table while I was standing up there. He screamed down to the other end and said, "This is my table." And I just touched it. That happened early on in my life, and it was something that frightened us to death. So my friend and I, we knew we were in trouble. So we turned around and hurried out the store. And everybody was just looking at us, outside, inside. So that was one horrific experience that I had then, and certainly will not like to see that ever happen again.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
You know, I was in high school, and I had went from elementary school to the 11th grade to a black high school.
Yeah.
So most of my friends had went to a white school. So I'm wanting to hang out with my boys, so I transferred from that black school to this white school my last 6 months before I graduated. And this was my first contact with racism. I had an English teacher. I'll never forget, her name was Miss Hudson. You know, and she was racist. You know, every time I would say something or do something, she would always put it down. And whenever I would do my work, she would always say that I never did my work and turned it in. So we had a black assistant principal. So I went and talked to him. I told him, I said, "Mr. Lee, you know, I'm turning in my work." And she's saying I'm not turning in my work, and she's trying to fail me. And he was like, "No, she wouldn't do nothing like that."
Right.
And I kept trying to tell him and tell him and tell him. And at the end of the semester, she failed me. That's the only course I have ever failed before in my entire life. So I had to make that up. It was a setback, but it didn't stop me. See, because my dad had told me years ago, don't get bitter, you get better.
Right.
So I applied myself and I did what I had to do.
Absolutely.
But I heard years later that some more black students were complaining about the exact same thing. They were doing their work, and she was throwing it away. They eventually fired the lady. You know, but my thing is how many students failed or flunked out because of her racist ideas.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Robert, I want to get your perspective. That's why I wanted you on this panel. I want to get your perspective on what's going on in this nation, what's taking place in this nation.
I think that we got to hold our law enforcement accountable.
Right.
I mean, to me, and I saw that thing because I don't ever watch the news hardly, and I heard something about Mr. Floyd.
Right.
And I thought, you know, what's done happened now?
Yeah.
So then, about a week later, I saw this, and I was sitting there, and I was shocked. I was like, how can somebody do this?
Yes.
I mean, this man is in handcuffs.
Yes.
So he's not flailing around.
Right.
Why are you holding him down?
Yeah.
I mean, he ain't going to get up and run off.
Right.
just stand there and watch him until something else happens.
Right.
Well, he's like, well, they were saying, he's standing there, got his hands in his pocket, and he's looking around like,
Right.
and I thought, this guy needs to get something done to him.
Absolutely.
Quick.
Absolutely.
But, so I just think they got to hold people accountable.
Absolutely.
And so far as raising kids, I only have a stepson, and when he came into my life, he was 30 something. So I mean, he was grown. But it all starts at home.
All starts.
And I heard a preacher a long time ago on TV, and I never have forgot it. If you send a hoodlum to school, and my wife would be hollering at me for this, if you send a hoodlum to school at 8 o'clock, guess what? A hoodlum is coming home at 4 o'clock.
Right. Yeah.
Don't send a hoodlum to school.
Right.
Straighten them out at home before they even get a chance to get a hoodlum. And then, I got disciplined with a razor strap.
Oh, wow.
And my daddy's arm was about as long as that table. So I got DNA of me on that thing, I guarantee it. But I think it starts at home, and it's just not the black kid. White people the same way. I mean, I could talk for an hour, but I ain't. But it's both.
Right.
And it's like I said, it all starts at home.
Yeah.
And if you do right at home, then you're gonna do right in the world. I mean, you watch the news, and they watch the news. Well, why is Charlie going to jail? Well, Charlie did something wrong. Don't do nothing wrong, you won't go to jail.
And thank you for your perspective. When you think about it, just recently, we had another shooting of an unarmed black man, Rayshard Brooks, running from the police, and he gets shot in the back. As we talk about these issues, it seems like there's something going on in this world. There's something going on in this nation when it comes to African Americans, men and women, and it's systemic. In other words, there's something there that we as a race, we as a people are dealing with. Now, many people need to remember this date, August the 20th, 1619. If you don't know that date, you need to know that date. August the 20th, 1619, the first enslaved Africans arrived in Jamestown, setting the stage for slavery in North America. And we've been dealing with this problem for 400 plus years, even on the battlefield. That's why I wanted to bring Clyde Brooks into this conversation. He served in the Vietnam War. We thank God for all of our veterans here at the Creek. I even started a veterans ministry for our veterans here at the Creek, because we thank God for you all. Corey talked about his grandfather and his father serving and coming home and still had to deal with racism. So, Clyde, speak to what took place in the Vietnam War, and as far as when you served and how it was when you got back home. We would love to hear that.
Well, I arrived in Vietnam on New Year's Day, 1968.
Wow.
30 days later, what they call the terror offense broke loose. And it was the worst thing that ever happened since the Vietnam War had started.
Yeah.
Even doing basic, you had racism.
Right.
But the company I was in just so happened we had some straightforward drill sergeants that held it down to a minimum. But in Vietnam, it sort of raised its ugly head during the time when Martin Luther King got killed in '68. So the blacks was fighting two wars because we had to fight the Viet Cong, and we still had to watch our back with the Caucasians.
Wow.
Even though we was in the fields together.
Right.
And it was scary
Yeah.
because
So you basically said something powerful. You said the blacks had to fight 2 wars.
Right.
Wow. The enemy and the war back home.
Right.
Wow.
And when we got back home, we came into San Francisco, and they advised us to take off our uniform and put our civilian clothes on before we board the plane to come home, because the protesters was outside and they was ugly.
Mm.
And so, you know, then when you got home, there was, for African American, you couldn't hardly find a job for Vietnam vet, because they always said there was something wrong with us.
Mm.
And so it was a struggle for a long time.
Absolutely. And it seems like it's still a struggle now.
It is.
Yeah. Many of you who are sports fans, you all know about Colin Kaepernick. You know, Colin Kaepernick refused to stand during the national anthem. He took a knee, and because of that, he was blackballed. Some people call it whiteball. Because of that, and I think many people still don't understand the reason why he was kneeling. He was kneeling in peaceful protest about unarmed African Americans being shot down. And he was excommunicated from the NFL. Couldn't even get a job. You know, I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and I've been waiting for us to get rid of Big Ben. I would love for us to have signed Colin Kaepernick a long time ago, but Colin couldn't get a job because of what he stood for. When you think about the flag, Clyde talked about taking his uniform off even when you got back. When you think about the flag, the issue concerning the flag, in your own perspective, how does the flag, what does the flag say to you? And can you understand other people's perception of the flag? Anybody, what is the flag? Come on.
I don't understand the rationale with the flag. The flag is a symbol of the United States.
Right.
It's not a covenant.
Right.
And so a lot of people get it wrong. Black fought in the same war, you know.
Yes.
Staying, but the quarterback in New Orleans talking about his
Drew Brees.
ancestors fought in the war.
Yeah.
Blacks fought in that same war.
Yes.
And so we weren't upset with the kneeling.
Right.
Why they're supposed to be so much more patronized than the blacks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody else want to speak to that subject? Yes.
My first encounter with the racism, I was 12 years old, and I'm going to get up to that point. I saw the police officer in Tate County, Mississippi, call my mom and my dad the N-word. I was a 12-year-old boy, and it always stuck with me, but it didn't change me who I am.
Right.
It made me aware. So I didn't go out mistreating anybody or downgrading anybody. Even when I was in the Marine Corps, in boot camp, I was spat on. My drill instructor, one of my drill instructors spat on me, took a rifle butt, hit me in the chest with it. Those are some of the things I went through, but I still didn't have a disdain attitude towards, because he was a Caucasian.
Right.
I still treated everybody fairly and nicely.
Right.
So when I see in our arena of NFL football, I see a man kneel because of the degradation of black men in this society, and how we're being torn down and looked upon as nothing. I went to the Gulf War.
Yeah.
I put my life on the line for freedom and liberty, of which that flag is supposed to stand for.
That's right.
I have every right, and they, like anybody else, have every right to take a stance for any injustice.
Right.
No matter whether it's getting anybody, but we're talking about what's going on between against black men now. We, as a race, should not be let down or put down in any way, any form of fashion.
Yes.
So if there's any injustices, we have a right to stand up for those injustices because we live here, we fought for this country, we fought for the flag.
Yes.
So we have a right, just like anybody else.
That's right.
It should be based on my skin color or anything. And to see what's happening to us in our society, they blackball Kaepernick And they should have never done that.
Yes.
No one's really stepping up to the plate in the NFL
Right.
and saying that we were wrong. And I know the commissioner stood up.
Roger Goodell.
Roger Goodell said what he said.
They got it wrong.
But that's not enough.
Yeah.
That's not enough. When you know you've wronged somebody,
Yes.
you should do everything in your power to make it right. Not with lip service, but with action. That's why I said that there's no compassion
Yes.
behind the words, because there's no action behind the words.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Reverend Pierce spoke about action, and I want to piggyback on that because there's a very, very, very familiar scripture that talks about action. You know, we know that there is systemic racism going on in America, and some may say, well, why are you all as fathers having this discussion? You know, the church ought to stick to staying inside the four walls, singing hymns, having choir days, having usher days, number 1 and number 2 usher day, junior usher day, male chorus day, all of these special programs, fish sale, Dunkin' Donuts, giveaway, beauty pageant, and all these different things that we've had in the church down through the years. I believe that the reason why a lot of this is taking place in the nation is because the church has been sitting in comfortable pews behind the four walls, watching from a distance what's taking place to our people. Many of you mentioned already Martin Luther King Jr. Even when Martin Luther King Jr., when he stood up, he had a great number of people in the church telling him he ought to sit down. He ought to leave it alone. But now everybody quoting Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I believe that it's time for the church to rise up. It's time for the church to call on our elected officials and demand that they do the right thing. Because if you can say with a straight face that you don't see a problem in America, you need to open up your eyes. And I believe the church needs to take the lead in that. Reverend Pierce just talked about actions. And for those of you who think I'm not in the Bible, there's a man in the Bible by the name of Zacchaeus. I know you all are pretty familiar with Zacchaeus. In Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through 10, I'm going to read this and get you all's thought on this. Hear this from the New Living Translation of the Holy Word. Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through 10. Jesus entered Jericho and made his way through the town. There was a man there named Zacchaeus. He was the chief tax collector in the region. In other words, if you do a biblical study, tax collectors rob their own people. Tax collectors oppress people. This is what they did. They specialized in oppressing others. He was the chief tax collector in the region. He had become very rich. He tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. When Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus and called him by name. Zacchaeus, he said, quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today. Now watch this. Zacchaeus quickly climbed down and took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. In other words, Zacchaeus is coming down from his place of uplifting. It's his place of privilege. Zacchaeus is coming down. But the people were displeased. He has gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner, they grumbled. Meanwhile, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and said, I will give half my wealth to the poor. Lord, and if I have cheated people on their taxes, I will give them back 4 times as much. Jesus responded, salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost. In other words, Zacchaeus was convicted in his heart, and he did right by humanity. It's time for those in place of privilege to get in their heart conviction and then action. And I believe that's what's going on in our nation. You know, you look at the people in the streets, they're rioting. You know, they were rioting a few days ago. Now you got peaceful protests. They want action. They want action. Let me ask you this question. Do you all see any wrong in the people and us demanding action? Anybody? Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, just being out there, seeing a lot of it, I don't see any wrong in what none of the peaceful protesters are doing.
Absolutely. Peaceful.
And that's the difference. And you know, you have a lot of individuals that have their own agenda that take the attention away from your peaceful protesters.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have people with great agendas and great purpose when they get out there,
mm-hmm.
their voices can be effectively heard. But when you have the percentage of people that's out there creating the nonsense and wreaking havoc,
Yes.
it puts getting any type of progress on hold because we have to deal with the nonsense
Yes.
before we listen to what the cause is really about.
Right. Thank you. And Kevin Sergeant Lee gave us that from, police perspective, just like Sergeant Corey giving it to us from police perspective. I want to read something because there is now this call in America to defund the police department. I want to read something to you that's in the Word of God. Romans chapter 13. If you have your Bibles, you can read along, those of you who are watching. Romans chapter 13. And these are the words of the Apostle Paul. Romans chapter 13, beginning with verse number 1. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. Verse 3, for rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. In other words, do what's right. Verse 4, for he is the minister of God to thee for good, but if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain, for he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Now there is this call. Robert, you talked about holding officers accountable. Now there is this call out here to defund the police department. And personally, let me say that I'm totally against that. Because all of us know some great police officers. We are friends. We have them in our family. So taking money from those who put their life on the line every day for us, I just believe is not the right way. Because if you look at it from the perception of a police officer, they leave their home not knowing if they're going to go back to their home that evening. So defunding the police department, taking money from them, I believe that you're going to upset some good ones, some great ones. It's kind of like this. If I can put it in terms of a family, if I can give an illustration when it comes to a family. Now let's be honest. All of us have some people in our families we don't claim. You can laugh, you can say amen to that one. Those of you who are watching and listening via conference call, all of us, you got somebody in your family you don't claim. Some cousins you will never claim. Some aunties, some uncles, some brothers or even some sisters that you won't claim because you know that they don't represent the family well, right? I mean, we're talking, all of us got some people in our family we don't claim, right? We got some cousins we don't claim, yeah. Y'all claim all y'all folks? Y'all pray for me, I don't claim all my people. I don't claim all my people. Folks come up to you, what's name your cousin? No, they ain't. Ain't no cousin of mine.
That's another set.
yeah, absolutely. That's it. Ain't no kidding me. But we know there are people in our families who cut up. They don't represent their knuckleheads. They don't represent the family well. But we don't blow up the family. We're still family. So even in the police department, I believe that we know that we have individuals who do not represent the police department well. But then you got to think about the great ones out there. And we have two of them here with us on today. So I would love to hear Kevin's and Corey's perspective from a police officer when you hear defund the police department, or just talking, generally about policing in America. I'll start with Corey.
A lot of things come along with it when people are talking about defunding police departments and transferring finances away from that. Going back to the days of the Wild West, when you deal with, mob rule and vigilante justice, what a lot of people are not taking in perspective of that is, going back to those days when people were gold mining and things of that, you had a mob rule. You had where, posses would gather and things of that nature, because at that time everybody was under martial law, where the town or the area had to have a marshal.
Yes.
But every town didn't have that.
Yes.
So then it became about, well, we're going to gather some men and do that. But the problem you had with that then was you started having innocent people being convicted in the streets.
Right.
So then, therefore, the marshals had to come up with a plan where we're going to find one worthwhile man and make him the town sheriff. So now there's some semblance of law and order in the town until a marshal can get there.
Right.
Now, what people are saying with them wanting to go back into a time where they're trying to encourage their own form of street justice or vigilante justice is, you're going to have some innocents who are going to pay the price.
Right.
Because people are going to be so eager to find people guilty of allegations and things that people are automatically going to accuse them of, without following a system, though it may be flawed, still gives people a chance to be judged by a jury of their peers in a process that gives people an actual chance to be found innocent or guilty, as opposed to judge, jury, and executioner right there in the middle of the street. And like you touched on it, Pastor, I mean, in any job you do, not just in law enforcement, whether you're a mailman, whether you are a CPA, whatever you do, everybody has good apples and bad apples.
Yes. Yes.
And for officers that go to work and do the job the right way, it just puts that much more of an onus and a burden on us to make sure that we continue to exude the right qualities in doing our work, not just professionally, but personally. Because like you said, when we go home, we're fathers, we're husbands, we're community leaders, other people trust us with their kids because of our profession.
Yes.
I coach basketball at what is considered a predominantly white church. But because the athletic director at church is familiar with my background in law enforcement, and then having others who might not necessarily be black speak on my behalf, now I have earned that trust to the point where now parents of all races, for an extended period of time, trust their children with me. But it all stems back to who I am as a person, and as I reflect it when I wear my badge, not just because I have a badge.
Right.
It's each officer's own qualities that come out when they do the job.
Yeah.
But right now the country is focusing so much on trying to tie us all in together, and we're not. And, Sergeant Lee could tell you the same thing. Everybody that gets up and puts that badge on in the morning, they're not the same.
Right.
It's the person who you are is how you operate. We all have policies and procedures and things of that nature, But at the end of the day, we all can't be grouped together.
Yeah.
We can't be grouped together. So the officers will try to get up and do their job to the best of their ability every day. All we can do is just try to continue that and hopefully, overshadow the bad ones.
Thank you. And thank you for doing that. I really appreciate that. Sergeant Lee?
Just like Corey pointed out, you look at it. My mom, when I told her I was interested in becoming a law enforcement officer, she looked at me, and everybody, you know me. I did not look like law enforcement material growing up, But when I told her what my goal was, and I even did a paper on it about it in school, my 12th grade year in Coach Logan class.
Yeah.
And told them what my plan was, and everybody looked at me and was like, "Man, you serious?" Gold teeth, Jerry curl, fade, all it, Nouveau fade. Like, are you serious? But when I told my mom, she was like, "Okay, well, if that's what you want to do, you go out, you do it, and you do it to the best of your ability."
I'm not gonna leave them out there too because we both had Nouveau.
Yeah, we did.
At the same time. We had Nouveau, gold teeth
Yeah,
at the same time.
yeah, we did.
Everybody went to a lady in New Orleans to get their hair done.
Oh, yeah. Shout out to the unisex. But anyway, but as I talked with my mom, she was like, "Okay, well, if that's what you want to do, you go ahead and you do it." But when I got into it and I finally graduated, she said, "Well, son, doing this job, you're not going to be liked. But this is what I want you to keep with you every day." She said, you stay prayed up, and I want you to treat everybody with the level of respect that you would want them to have for you. I've been doing this in 3 decades, the 90s, the 2000s, and now we in the 20s. 3 decades of dealing with people. And I've watched kids grow up, and I watched adults get in trouble, get out, and come back and thank me. But before I donned the uniform, I was a man anyway. Right. And my foundation that my mother instilled in me, it took that to take policing to another level for me. Because I went all about the bad guy must go to jail. My reason for coming on the police department was for change anyway.
Right.
Because if you look at it back in the early 90s, when we had Mayor Harrington, our previous mayor of Memphis, how would you have a department that doesn't reflect the demographics that it police?
Absolutely.
So if I wanted to be a part of change, because this stuff is not new, you come and you show what a police officer should look like. You be the example. Yeah. And when you be the example, you show other people, that this is what an officer is supposed to be like.
Absolutely.
And that's what I've carried for all these years, for the 21 years. That's how I've carried myself. And I always tell this to people as well. I mean, you have, say you got 2,000, 3,000 officers, but each one of them got a different set of home training, as my mom would say. Yeah. Everybody was raised differently. Right. And if their foundation wasn't stable, getting a job, what makes you think that person will be stable later in life? Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. You could develop the qualities of a person that can eventually get it right and learn that, man, what I was doing in the past was not right at all. And then you eventually get it. But if you have it from the beginning and you go astray, you can always be reeled back in to what you originally believed in. Yeah. So I say that to say this. I hate that we're being judged by the bad apples. Right. But I can't do anything, speaking for myself, I can't do anything but continue to be the person that I am, to continue to do my work outside the uniform, inside the uniform, and give people the opportunity to make their own assessment instead of allowing media to make their assessment of what a good officer should be.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for that, Kevin.